people scale back to just one command destroyer, and then using that extra points to protect that command destroyer a lot better.
Balgon, the Balgon, the Balgon.
So, we have in the studio with Apophany, we have Mr. Bayart J, we have Black Bart Pirate, we have Damascus Kadesh, we have Elise Randolph, we have myself, Ithaca Hawk, we have Satonia from the CSM, and fixing everything and making this even possible is Equalizer 11. Holy crap, we got there. How are you all? How's everyone?
I'm doing good. I'm doing great, actually. I'm super excited for Alliance Tournament this weekend. I've been waiting for like 6 weeks. Like every week, I'm like, oh, is it yet? Is it this weekend yet? Is it this weekend yet?
Yeah, like, 2 more days. 2 more days, and then all the spaceships can explode. I mean, when's the first boundary violation? I guess we just look at when the first PL match is, and we'll find that out. But anyway, let's get on with the actual show, and let's have a look at the schedule here. So it says here the EQ is now going to take you through our production setup for how we actually do this. I mean, how do we put this together? How does the studio work? And, just how do we get the Alliance Tournament out to you guys from a little studio in Nottingham? EQ, for the second time, please explain.
All right. Hello and welcome. I'm EQ. I am one of the 2 main streamers for the event, and I will be bringing you the first 2 weekends of the Alliance Tournament, and Thurindian Biohazard is going to, our other streamer is going to be taking care of the second 2 weekends. So we've prepared this little diagram just to try and illustrate the work that goes into this. So we're gonna start with one of the most important pieces of equipment, which is one of the main reasons why we have a studio in the first place, and that is the TriCaster that you can see in the top left in the TV gallery. That's basically just like you have a sound mixing machine, this is a video mixing machine. So we get feeds from the cameras in the studio, and those go into this machine. It has uploaded advertisements that you see playing during the show, and various other visual effects, and all of those are being controlled and maintained by that TriCaster. The TriCaster then sends a signal into our PC1, which is our main streaming PC, and that is the one that actually outputs onto Twitch. On that PC1 is where me and Bio are going to be controlling things. We're using OBS as our main streaming software, and we have 2 clients of EVE Online running in the background. I think Bio uses 3 to sort of be the observer camera that you see during the matches. And we sort of switch between the studio and the arena from this computer. To the right of the PC1, you can see the stats guy, which is going to be Alexei Aksan. He is there because he gets the most direct feed of the fight, so he can quickly sort of gather and input information about ships exploding and people and the times of people being alive and whatnot. So there's that. Then we have the PC2, also in the top left corner. This is the computer which controls what is being displayed on the TV in the studio. And of course in the studio we have cameras showing the beautiful faces of some of the cast members here as well. That's where we're going to have the hosts and commentators. And some things that we're trying to add this year is the viewing party. So there's going to be a viewing party for the Alliance Tournament, and we're going to try to incorporate some of that into the stream by having a camera there. This is still a work in progress sort of thing, and we're still like playing around with the idea a bit, but you know, ideally we would try to provide something like that. And of course, the two people that are most important in the entire operation are the two technicians, the visual and audio technicians that are in the TV gallery in the top left. One of them is in charge of the video feed, so he is going to switch around what camera is the main camera. He's going to move around the camera so that the commentators and the analysts and the hosts are always going to be in the frame in the right way. And then we have the sound technician, which makes sure that everyone's microphones sound as they should. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Really quick, because I don't want to bore people with technical details. But yeah, that's basically how things look. And we have a video from last year that we're gonna show you now, which is a quick tour of behind the scenes, and then we're going to return to the rest of the talking.
Hey guys, I'm gonna give you a quick tour of the building, show you what we're doing today. Come on. Here we have some of the crew getting ready. We've got Ithaca right here, we've got Brett on the Thomas, one and only Tony on reload.
Nash.
Right here we've got the commentating booth and the studio. Come and have a look.
Should I be gesturing, or will that take up the whole?
Our host Apotheny getting ready for the show.
Wait, I take up the whole screen.
Visual technician Jake.
No,
Let's go and have a look upstairs, come on.
What they see.
So in here we're all ready for the viewing party. We're going to have a couple of people down here. A little bit of canteen so the boys can get some sandwiches and some drinks. You know, we're ready with some beer. Always good. This is one of the magic rooms. Here we have the director. BRJ will be directing from here. We've got Biohazard actually putting out the stream. So you can actually watch what's going on. And Alexei Aksan will be doing all the statistics from here as well. Last but not least, right here is the magic room where the boys will be mixing all the sound and the video.
You know, he's the one who's going to control what's on that.
Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream.
So as you can see, pretty complicated setup. Lots of people very hard at work there to bring the Alliance tournament to your eyes for your viewing pleasure. Of the people here, Apotheny, you've done Alliance tournament quite a few times, probably as much, if not more than Elise. But the difference between you and Elise is you've done it in Iceland with CCP themselves, and also in Nottingham with EVNT. I mean, how do you find the difference in sort of the way everything's done? Like, what's your experience at CCP? What's your experience in Nottingham? Tell us about it.
So, I mean, the core difference between CCP and Nottingham is that Nottingham have the bar in the building, whereas CCP's bar is directly downstairs. So there's a slight bit more of a walk. But aside from that, being at the CCP offices is kind of like a weird and wonderful mystery land, which is kind of also true for all of Iceland. But Nottingham is an hour away on the train for me, but obviously people flying in. But yeah, I think that the main difference I find experientially is that when CCP staff are doing the behind the scenes tech stuff, so the job that Equalizer does, the job that the stats guys do, the commentators, we are kind of kept in our green room and we can hang out and talk with people, but you go in the green room and then when CCP want you, you go on stage and there's a schedule. Whereas Nottingham it tends to be, I don't want to say more relaxed, but that might be the best way to put it, in that everyone's a player and everyone's on the same page, and there's not that occasional like, how much am I allowed to talk to you even though I know you've signed an NDA kind of thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, when I did it last year, it was just sort of like the casual, you can wander out, you can have a beer, you can go upstairs to the gallery and watch the guys at work. And I mean, we really have to give extra credit to both EQ and Biohazard, because they are basically the only two people that can do the job they do. I'm pretty sure if we brought them to Nottingham at the same time, they'd have to put them on separate planes, because if that plane went down, then 80 ain't happening without them. So at least if it happens, you're not going to see it. You'll just have a bunch of us sitting in our rooms talking, and you can listen to 80 radio.
I mean, the first 80, definitely, possibly more than that, was just radio. There was no video. It was just a radio cast, like old boxing matches.
Do you know what, that'd be pretty good. Someone did like an 80 like audio only stream. I think I would probably listen to it. It would probably be super hype as well, because it'd have to be an absolute mental case to even try it to begin with. Anyway, so let's move on. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about the prize ships. So I'm going to bring Suetonia in on this one, because he's been sort of trying to not hype it up, but he's been telling us a little bit about what's coming for a little while now. And now it's all public. He can really tell everyone what the new prize ships are about. So Suetonia, what do you tell us a little bit about them?
So you guys saw them today on the dev blog. They're posted. So the Hydra, which is the Demovac, it gets an extra 2 mid slots as well as an extra high slot. It gets it can fit a Covert Ops cloak. It also gets a bonus to combat scanner probes as well. And the main bonus on it really is the fact that both the cruiser and the frigate, they get a 50% bonus to the max ramp charge. So instead of them ramping up to 150% damage total, which is 2.5 times, 150%, which is 2.5 times the base value, they actually ramp up to 3.75 times the base value. So I believe the frigate, the Demovac, I think it can do close to 600 DPS at max charge, while also having 4 mids, 4 lows, and a Covert Ops cloak, which is pretty powerful, although it does take quite a long time to get there. And I think the cruiser can do something like Vindicator DPS if it somehow gets to max charge. Although keeping an AT prize ship on the field for that long is something that's incredibly risky.
Yeah, so I mean, what do you think, Black Bart, about these new prize ships? Do you think these are going to be seeing a lot of use on TQ, or do you think these are going to be sort of tournament-heavy ships that really only get pulled out like the Atana in specific matches, or is it going to be more like the Fiend where you see people using them?
I kind of hope somebody tries to do like the ganking Astero thing with the Hydra, just taking 100, I guess probably 150 billion ISK ship and killing people's Vexor Navy issues with it. I'm sure. There are certain groups on TQ that they always use these ships no matter what happens, just for the sake of saying like, hey, look, we actually took them out, we did stuff with them. But I definitely. There's a place for it on TQ just with every AT ship. I think these are probably a little bit better than like the last few years. Besides the Fiend, like, the last couple of years of AT ships haven't been particularly great on TQ. But the cruiser, at least, the I have to look up what it's called.
Tiamat.
Tiamat, yeah, that thing's going to be a great AT ship, especially depending on how they do points next year. So obviously we won't see it this year because they won't exist yet.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to point out the skins that you get are going to be for the Triglavian ships as well, and it makes the Triglavian ships look like zebras in space. It's actually the coolest shit.
And everyone knows skins add 10% extra damage, so that's pretty powerful, especially in the tournament format. You definitely want to get that extra 10%. Right, so who else have we got here? We've got Suetonia, we've got Damascus, we've got Black Bart, we've got Elise, we've got Apothane, we've got Mr. Bay. I'm going to bring Damascus in. You've done a couple of tournaments. You did some tournaments in like the Amara Championship. You actually won the tournament we did in Iceland at FanFest just a couple months ago. Took home some pretty dope AF prizes. You flew in the AT last year. Was that your first AT last year?
No, I actually, my first tournament was the Amar Championships, and then that group kind of got all hyped from like a fun experience with that and pulled in some more people and did one AT under White Legion. And then the next year I started with Templess, and then this is my second year with Templess.
Nice. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how the process from when it's decided, like, we're going to fly this, who decides what's going into ships, and then how do you get from the station where you're staging to the arena itself? Like, how does that happen for you?
Well, there's quite a checklist to try to go through. Everyone's got to sort of, everyone's got to talk it through. A lot of times it's easy to make a last minute change. You have a bit of a discussion. You're like, okay, we're going to pick this comp, and then, oh no, but what about this? We forgot to consider this possible enemy fleet we'll encounter. Let's change it. And so you got to really settle in on what you're going to fly first, and then do your implants and stuff, because you don't want to put in a bunch of expensive implants and then have to rip them out because you just changed something. And then you really got to, figure out who is most comfortable in what ship, how you can make sure everyone's got the right skill points for everything. And then you kind of sit there and your palms start getting sweaty as you wait for the CCP teleport. And usually everyone's kind of running through mental checklists, just making sure everyone's got ammo, everyone's got drones, everyone's got everything they need. There's nothing you have that's going to break the rules, like Tech 2 drones this year have been disallowed again. And then, it's kind of, you don't know when it's coming, but then screen goes black, and then you're teleported to the arena system outside of the arena. So you have to stay docked until that occurs. And then you get instructions in local to warp to the beacon. Then you want to super carefully right click and warp to at your range. Everyone sort of rehashes their ranges, where they're going, and then you go in and then you're there. And then you're just waiting for the countdown for it to start.
Yeah, I remember my first time in the tournament. I think it was AT12. Flew with the Bastards, with Nash, Cadaver, one of the guys who runs +10 in Event T. And I remember, even if you're ready, you're sitting in a station and you're like, okay, we're going to get moved, everyone just chill, we're all ready. Then it happens and you get moved and you feel your heart rate spike as all of a sudden the screen goes black and you're like, oh god, it's all gone wrong. And then suddenly you're in space and this is pretty cool. And then that moment where you're told, warp to your ranges, don't fuck it up, because if you do, you get moved to 0 and then you get absolutely shat on and it's not where you want to be. But it's a really cool experience, I think. I mean, at least how many tournaments have you been doing now?
My first tournament was Alliance Tournament 6. So that's been fun. But while I've been commentating, I haven't been flying the Alliance Tournament because I don't think it's disallowed, but it just seems kind of not cool to do. So I missed the last couple, but it is incredibly terrifying when they move you, because as the Masses was saying, as soon as you get moved, you're like, shit, your hand starts to shake, your palms get a little bit sweaty, and you're like, I have to make sure I warp. You kind of ask someone in your fleet, like the FC or something, like wing warp at 50 if your guys are all going in at the same range, or wing warp at 0, just so you don't mess up. But it is a lot.
So I was going to say, no matter how prepared you think you were, you always get that feeling like you forgot something. When you leave home for a trip, you're like, oh, I have this feeling I forgot something. You get that feeling when you get teleported. You're like, oh no, did I leave something offline? Did I forget drones?
And there's always someone in the fleet, at least for the PL team, that's like, oh shit, guys, I'm in a shuttle. And everyone just loses their mind, like, what, you fucked up? Oh no, we lost. But no, it's just a troll. But back in the day, in the way back machine, they used to fire a little pulse module out that would break the locks. So you'd be technically allowed to lock other people. They would just break the lock right at the end, so you would start fresh. But if you moved at all in the previous Alliance tournaments, or I think it's between AT1 and the first Alliance tournament and the AT8, they didn't really freeze you in place. So if you accidentally touched your mouse, or you hit something on the keyboard, you double clicked in space when you're trying to drag something, you'd be set to half health. And that happened way more than I'd like to admit.
Yeah, that's one thing a few people actually I've seen asking is, can you spam lock? What happens if you lock someone before the tournament actually, or before the match actually starts? But you can spam lock. You just can't lock anything. You can't move and you can't lock anything until the countdown finishes running, and then all of a sudden you can. So spam away. Don't feel like you have to wait until it actually goes to 0 before you can start clicking. You can be hammering that button just to get that little extra tick advantage in there.
And just to demonstrate a little bit of the skill cap. For a while, bombers and launching bombs was a big thing in the Alliance tournament. Especially in the drone meta when it was early on. So basically the match would start, you'd launch some bombs, and then as the team rushed into the team with the bombers, they'd all die to bombs. So these clever EVE Online players realized the exact time where they can start their micro warp drive, because the micro warp drive, you can still use modules while you're preparing for a match. So you start your micro warp drive, and then by the time the match starts, your micro warp drive is half cycled or something, so you don't have the sig bloom when the bombs detonate. It's really clever.
Yeah, those smart cookies. And we have a very smart cookie with us today. We have Bay ArtJ. I'm going to bring him in now to explain a little bit about the actual way the tournament works. Now, it's a double elimination bracket. We have seeds, we have people having buys, we've got a conquest rules, all sorts of funky, crazy rules. Bay, please explain the Alliance tournament to me.
Sure. So the Alliance tournament, the format is 10v10 pilots, and the format as you progress through the tournament, it's a double elimination. So it's kind of like two single eliminations like kind of overlapped, and you get two opportunities to. Well, you can lose a match and then you get one opportunity to carry on, basically. So there's two brackets. There's a winner's bracket and a loser's bracket. If you lose your first match, you drop down into the loser's bracket, and then you have to progress through that bracket, which ends up being very long because most people get knocked down, obviously. And you can fight your way back up. The winner of the loser's bracket ends up playing the winner of the winner's bracket during the final. The last 3 matches before the final, I think, are best of 3s, and then the final match itself is a best of 5 with the winner of the winner's bracket coming in with an extra win. So yeah, that's kind of roughly how it works. You can go on the Alliance Tournament sub forum on the Evenline forums, and you can check out the challenge brackets if you're interested. I'm sure if someone's got a handy, could drop in the chat. That'd be cool. And that kind of is an easier way to look at it, probably, rather than have me explain it. Oh, it's been deleted. There you go. Never mind.
I think one of the cool things is if you're in the winner's bracket and then you never lose and you get all the way through to the final, you get there in I think 6 rounds and potentially 5 if you've got a bye week this year. But if you lose your first match and then make it to the final, you would have played, I think it's 10 or 11 rounds to get there. So the route to the final from the loser's bracket is a lot harder, but it's still definitely possible. I know Apothemy will probably know this, but how many times has the loser's bracket team actually won the Alliance tournament?
Oh, I haven't got a damn clue, dude. Like, I gave up learning those things, and I just rely on Alexi to say things in my ear when I'm hosting. It's so
I
great,
actually know the
delegation.
answer to that.
No.
The losers bracket team has won every single time, with the exception of last year.
Wow.
Holy crap.
That's pretty impressive, actually. I didn't know that. Well, there you go. So just because you get knocked down, if you lose your first match in the first day, don't worry. It's not over. That statistically means you're going to win the tournament. So thanks, Elise. That's a real morale post right there.
I'd like to know who had to turn through the most matches through the losers bracket, because you could make it kind of partway through the winners bracket, then drop down.
Hydra last year.
Yeah, Hydra last year is the longest possible route, I think, to the finals, except for
because they lost their very first game.
Yeah,
that was against Templars.
And then the final, the final series, when was it the full 4-3 or was it 4-2?
I think it went to the final.
It went to the very last one.
Yeah, the very last match.
Yeah,
that's the maximum amount of games a team can possibly play in the Alliance tournament, and they still don't win. Kind of annoying after that slog.
Matches I'm seeing in chat from Casper, who was in the team last year. Immediate upset to Hydra, dropped into the losers bracket, managed to swoop all the way through back to the final, and then lost to Drakes. So good job, guys. Drake.
One of the bigger changes to the rules set this year, obviously we can talk about it in a couple minutes, the conquest rules for the final weekend or the final day. But the biggest change for the rest of the tournament is that you are now restricted to bring 1 ship of the hull type. Previously it was 2, and before that it was 3. So people used to very often bring stuff like 3 Sleipnirs. Then it turned down to 2 Sleipnirs, and now you can only bring 1 of the same ship type in your match. Obviously, that doesn't include Tech 2 ships or Navy pirate faction variants. So you can have a Vexer and a Navy Vexer and an Ishtar, but you just can't have 3 Navy Vexers or 3 Ishtars, or 2 Navy Vexers and 2 Ishtars even.
So do you think that's going to see a pretty significant shift in the meta then, or do you think we're still going to see a number of the sort of the famous comps that we've seen before, but maybe just a little bit modified? Or is it going to be completely different this year? Is it just going to be a bit more clowny because people are limited to 1 ship? I mean, what do you think?
I think a lot of this really screws up with the drone meta, especially because what made the drone meta so easy to do or so prevalent is drones are very, very strong, and it made your ship have a lot of utility slots in the mids, or you can kite really well with them as well if you wanted to. But they were super hard to ban, because if you ban Gila Ishtar, you can just take Navy Vexer, or just a standard Vexer, or even a Myrmidon we've seen in some cases. So it was really hard to ban out drone comps. And if you do go all in to ban out a drone comp, then you leave yourself open to something that could absolutely crush you. So it became very rock, paper, scissors, and drones were very strong to begin with. So a team that could be like on the fringe would just practice these drone comps over and over, and they'll know that during the Alliance tournament, they'll be able to play a certain drone comp. Now that's going to be completely gone. So we'll see the standard archetypes that we'll see. We'll see rush teams, we'll see kite teams, we'll see control teams. But it's going to be a little bit different from what we're used to seeing. Not completely different, though.
I mean, personally, I know when the rules come out, you love to just start theory crafting comps and ships and try and come up with new things. How did you find it this year when the rules came out? Like, was it a big surprise that it was going to one ship? How did that change everything for you?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously hadn't heard about it before. Like, a lot of people think that people who do stuff at EVNT like find out all this stuff really soon, and like you have to know some things, right? Like, is there going to be AT this year? We probably knew that before it was super officially confirmed to everyone, but things like what the rule set is going to be. CCB would never tell us that kind of thing, right? Like, that would be the stupidest thing in the world. Like, just for so many reasons. But yeah, so I found out the same day the rest of the game did. And what I really liked about the one ship rule is that the ships that, as kind of as Elise was saying, that you don't usually see get to come up, which means that if you bring up your Pyfa full of all your ship fits from last year, they're still useful, but like now you need a fit for an Atron in the Alliance tournament, which no one since probably Brave Newbies have done it, but like no one else has ever done. So like there's a ton, not only more ships you have to consider, but more ways to fit them and see, can this ship do the same job as another ship does, but slightly worse because I can't bring two of those things. So that was kind of my main interest in finding ships that can do the same jobs as old ships enough that the old comps still work.
Nice, yeah, that definitely means that bans, maybe before if you banned a Sleipnir, you took out the two Sleipnirs. Now it's only one, but of course it means that that ban is a little bit more powerful, and especially now that there's going to be 3 bans as well. I mean, speaking of just the changes to structure, let's Black Bart Pirate. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the conquest rules and what that really means, and first of all, what are conquest rules?
So for the final weekend, if you win a game versus your opponent, every ship that you took with you is now banned for the rest of the matches. Except I think that we've set it up so that it resets as the final match if we get to like that last match, that potential 5th match, which that got released like a couple hours ago. So I'm not 100% sure on the reading of that, but it looks like it's not going to be that bad. Basically, if you win a game with let's say you have a really powerful team comp, you can no longer bring that team comp. And not only can you no longer bring that team comp, you can no longer bring any of the ships to that team comp. If you win 2 matches, now you're missing out on 20 ships. So like what Apothony said, like not only do you have to figure out fits for every single ship in the game, basically, you have this potential where like not only do you have to create, say like 4 or 5 or 10 like winning team compositions, you also have to recognize that you are going to have ones that you completely, absolutely, 100% cannot use in the final weekend, just because, like, if I bring in Oneros as a logistic ship, I can no longer bring in Oneros for the rest of the matches. If I bring, like, what's a super common ship that we always see, like one of the command destroyers,
maybe.
Yeah, or like a command destroyer, like the armor command destroyers you'll see in almost every single team comp, probably like last year. So you bring a Pontifex and a Magus, and now where are your links coming from? Yeah, bombers, there you go. Yeah, we see bombers and everything. So it's going to make things like even crazier on top of that. You've had to theory craft not only fits for almost every ship, but you're going to also have to theory craft like backup team comps. And those bans, the other team can also then ban 3 more ships. So those last weekend is going to be rough. Like, I feel sorry for any team captain that has to figure that out. But
yeah,
to be fair, they're also winning stuff. So
during that last 5 matches, if it goes to that last 5th one, I mean, so Tonya, what do you think of this conquest? Or do you think it's a good addition? Do you think it's going to add? Do you think we're going to see maybe like the dominant team lose all their ships and then swing to the other side and go to the full 5th match, or do you think it's going to be just a bit silly?
I think it's super cool, mostly because it increases the chance that a team might actually bring a Castro in the final. But but yeah, it's really interesting actually, because it's going to test the theory crafting of both teams a lot more. I think we're going to see like a lot of different ships, different comps. It's also one of the things as well is it makes flagships really, really powerful, especially if you can save them, because flagships also ignore the conquest rule. So if you still have your flagship alive in the final, you can potentially bring that flagship again, even if you've won with it. So if you lose your flagship earlier on, that's a bit of a disadvantage you could have going into the final. So it's going to put even more pressure on, trying to save that flagship for the crucial game that you need to put it in.
So it's super interesting because if you bring it again, your entire support fleet has to be different because you can't bring anything that you just won with it, like along with the flagship.
Yeah, so if you had a flagship Lashak, like 2/3 of the teams in the tournament do, you would probably struggle to maybe build another strong armor core around it. But I think it's still kind of workable. It's still a powerful option. And there are some teams that have, like, I think there's 2 flagship practices in the Lions Tournament too, which could be a curveball if any of those teams actually end up getting it into the final.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited to see the finals. I think it's really going to change things up. I mean, last year with no conquest rules, we saw Drakes win the Alliance tournament. So with conquest rules and with the extra band compared to last year, just the whole different setup in one single ship, I think we're going to see some very underused ships suddenly win the Alliance tournament, and it's going to be fantastic. But one of the things we glossed over a little bit, and I want to just pull us back to, is that for a lot of the matches that most people will play in, like your week 1, your week 2, and so on, it's always going to be a single match. You play the match, you either win and go through the winners bracket, drop to the losers bracket, and then again you either win, stay in the losers bracket, or drop out the tournament completely. But once you reach a certain point, they actually switch to series. They switch to series matches, so best of 3 and best of 5. Apothene, which of the matches are actually the best of? Is it just the quarterfinals, or is it all the way down to the semis as well? Or other way around?
Better ask another person.
I think it's the quarterfinals as well as the losers bracket semifinals, as well as the winners bracket semis.
So it really sort of shakes things up a little bit, because suddenly, especially if you're in the losers bracket and you just have to bring everything that you can do, if you lose, you're out. Whereas in these best of 3, best of 5 matches, you think, maybe I don't want to bring my best comp. Maybe I want to hold something back. I mean, Black Bart, what did you guys do last year? You flew with NC last year, didn't you?
We've had 600 billion in skinny T-ships.
And how did that go for you?
Vince was kind of mad. But we pretty much we used the same team comp the entire time, more or less, until the finals, and then we just fell apart due to Octodad. I can't really say anything else than that. I could say that we would be kind of punished pretty heavily if we were using last year's strategy, because we more or less flew a battlecruiser core with a flagship Valgorn and either a Rabisu or an Oneros almost every single match that we did up until the finals. So that was pretty much our best team composition. And if we were doing with this current year's rule with last year's setup, after our first match, we'd be like, all right, I guess we just don't have a really strong team comp anymore, and we'd have to figure other stuff out. I mean, we definitely did have other team comps that we could use, but we had kind of figured out, I think correctly, that what we had was the best setup for the current meta. We just were a little behind the meta.
Yeah, the flag ball sort of Rabisu method last year was really popular. Elise and Apothene as well, to a certain extent. PL, of course, are a team that is known for their metagaming and the theory crafting and winning almost as much off the field as on the field. What about you guys? Do you think in a best-of series, are you more likely to hold something back on that first match, or to see what the other team brings, especially if it's going to eliminate them? Let's say, for example, you're the captain, Elise, and you're in the finals. It's the first match. If you win, then your ships are banned. But if they win, their ships are banned. What do you think you're going to do? Are you going to bring a good team and try and win straight off the bat? Or are you going to let them ban their ships first?
So there's 2 methodologies for it, right? So generally speaking, a lot of times when we see this actually happen and we see it play out, the team with the 1 game advantage, so the winners bracket finalists, will say, you know what? We're just going to take a setup that we're comfortable with, just to see what you guys have in your bag of tricks. Because, I mean, especially this year, you're going to have a very deep bag of Alliance Tournament setups to be competitive through the entire tournament. So, I mean, that's a pretty good strategy. Personally, though, I would always just try and win every single match, with one exception. If I believed that a flagship was like incredibly strong, it would make a certain setup unbeatable, like we've seen in previous years, then I would suicide my entire team to try and kill the flagship, especially with that one game advantage. PL has done that before in Alliance 1 and 11, and it's kind of worked out for them. They lost to Hydra Reloaded in the semis, but then came up to win the finals just because that flagship didn't exist anymore. But yeah, most teams would generally say, let's see how deep your bag of tricks go. One of the things is like in the finals, like the finals for the Alliance tournament, everything goes like through the wall or through the window and the wall too. Just throw everything out through the wall and the window, because you've got such little time to make decisions. You're pressed for time. You've got very few ships that you can select. You make these snap judgments that you can't go back on ever again. And that's how you wind up what we had last year, which is just a bunch of dudes flying Drakes. So it's like, you know what, we can just do Drakes. Let's do it. Let's just do Drakes and it'll work. And it totally did. So what ended up happening last year, and a lot of times in the finals, you see a lot of mirror matches with just changes to modules because you don't really have that much time to change actual setups out. You don't necessarily have time to get the right pilots, the implants, and stuff like that. So you just say, let's take what we flew before, learn from what we screwed up in the last match, and then make it work.
Yeah, I think something that I think the viewers maybe don't quite understand, but like in those best of threes, you have maybe 15 to 20 minutes to decide your comp, get everybody reshipped, get everybody reimplanted, and then get yourself prepared, and then you get teleported into the arena. And I mean, if you think about like anything you've ever done in EVE, just as like a, you know, any situation in EVE, just handing ships out alone and making sure that your fleet comp is set up correctly usually takes like 15 minutes if you're handing out, like, say, a fleet of Feroxes and like Ospreys or something, right? So like if you pick just some normal thing that happens on a day-to-day basis in a lot of alliances where it's like, hey guys, come fly with me, I'll like give you ships, that takes longer than you have to set up your AT team, get them in the right implants, make sure everyone's ships are fit and their ammo's in there and their stuff is ready. So it's going to be super, just really brutal this year for people, because they're going to have to probably, you know, potentially create team compositions like on the fly in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's just going to be. I don't envy the captains that reach that part. Like I half wish, like if I was in it, that I would go out before that, just doesn't have to deal with that. I mean, I remember, and most of the people here who played in tournaments will remember at the times when you had to basically fit every single ship manually, module by module, in advance because you didn't have time in the tournament. So if something changed or you didn't have the ships ready, it was a frantic scramble to try and buy everything and fit everything up before like multi-fit and things like that all appeared, and just made our life so much better. I mean, Damascus, did you ever experience that, or is that before your tournament time?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was in by the time the Amara Championship was there, and that was only 4 ships to start with. So it kind of, I had a bit of a ramping up experience before getting to the full-blown AT anyway, so it was not quite as much of a shock to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was bloody awful. It was the worst thing. And I remember just coming in hours before with me and Nash Cadaver in the Bastards team, and just spending hours just fitting up all the possible ships for all the possible comps that we were going to potentially have to use, because of course if something gets banned, then you know you can't use that comp anymore, but you've still paid for all the ships. You can't just like wait to the last minute and multi-buy them from Jita like you can do today. Huh. Good times, good times, good times.
I was going to ask, are the conquest rules, do they apply to every series, including like the best of 3 in the losers bracket and stuff, or is it only that final?
It's only the finals.
Yes, I believe it's only the final. And as Bart mentioned earlier on, it does reset for the last match. So if that best of 5 series goes to the very last match, then all bans are undone. So every ship is available again, and you only have your 3 bans. Last thing before we go to a quick advert break, and then we'll get on to doing some looking ahead and some predicting of some dope AF matches. But there's actually something that we've mentioned just in passing, but we've not explained, and that is the winner's advantage going into the final best of 5. Bay, are you still here? Do you want to just tell us what the winner's advantage is and why is it so important?
So the team that comes from the winning bracket, who does that 5 or 6 easy matches all the way through, They start the final match with a game in hand. So they start 1-0 up basically. So they only need to win 2 matches to win the tournament, whereas the guys from the loser bracket need to win 3. So it gives you a huge advantage coming from the winners bracket, only needing to win 1 less match than the other guys. So yeah, it's really important. And so that straight run from all the way through the winners bracket is the dream for tournament captains.
Awesome. So we've gone over a little bit of how it all works. And what we're going to do now is we're going to hand to EQ, and he's going to put on some nice adverts, and then we're going to come back and we're going to look forward to the first weekend of the schedule and maybe do a little bit of predicting. So, stay tuned.
Warp drive active.
Hi, my name is Durhadur, dreaded CEO Emeritus. My interests include streaming. Hey, speaking of streaming, you should check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Durhadur, multidollarmediaempire.com. Check out my Twitter, twitter.com/Durhadur, multidollarmediaempire.com.
Eve Dublin returns on August 31st and September 1st for a 2-day event. For tickets and more information, visit evedublin.com.
All right, welcome back, guys. So one quick correction to what we were talking about earlier on. It's not just the final that has the conquest rules. It's also the final of the losers bracket as well, which is a best of 3. So that is the match that determines who faces the winner of the winners bracket in the grand final. Both the grand final and the losers bracket final will be conquest rules. One a best of 3 and one a best of 5. Now, speaking of matches and schedules and so on, we've been posting the challenge tournament brackets into Twitch chat, and we're going to be sort of having a little look through them and look forward, especially for the first weekend, and maybe just kind of discussing it. And one of the things that you might notice first, if you click on it, is that some teams are already listed in their round 2, and that is the 5 teams that finished top 5 last year, managed to secure themselves buys for the very first round. Bay, can you tell us a little bit about the seeding and how this has worked out so that those teams have buys?
Yeah, absolutely. So the seeding for this year is based on the results from the previous year, which is how it's how it's worked for the last 2 Alliance tournaments, I think. So the order of the team in which the teams won last year is their seeding And then teams which didn't fly last year, which is quite a good chunk of them, they get randomly seeded. So yeah, that's pretty simply. And teams that kind of finish like joint 8th, they're randomly seeded within their bracket, as it were. So that's how it works roughly. So it means that 5 teams this year, because we didn't have a full 64 teams apply, 5 teams, the top 5 teams from last year, end up with a bye into the second round. So yeah, that's how it works.
So pretty sweet for them. Like if you're, for example, NC here down in the number 4 slot, all you have to do is win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that includes the final. So 5 rounds to get into the final is pretty good. Much better than going straight into the losers bracket and going through all that stuff. If on your screen just now you're looking at the winners bracket, but if EQ scrolls down a little bit and then just pans across the losers bracket, you get a true sense of scale of just how much bigger that is than the winners bracket. But let's finish talking about what ifs and start talking about who's going to win, and that is something that we never get wrong. We're always correct. I know at least Apothene, you are being made into an advert from your predictions last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Have I?
Yep.
Someone took you guys dismissing someone just completely out of hand.
Oh no, they were. That was the Templars, because, and I'll be honest, if anybody at the time was legitimately predicting Templars to defeat Hydra, I will take my hat off to you. But anyone who doesn't have their predictions put on the internet for everyone to see, you were predicting that as well. So don't try and get on a high horse here.
I can see Damascus smiling up in his window there. He was a member of the Templars team. How did that feel when you guys knocked Hydra out in the very first round? Were you expecting that, or were you sort of, we'll just do our best and then go through the losers bracket?
Yeah, I mean, you take every match as it comes and do your best. And I think it was kind of midway through the match. There's a video actually from my perspective. I captured the footage on my PC of that match, and it's like the excitement starts ramping as we start to see things tipping in our favor. So it was quite exhilarating as we started to cross that threshold towards like a more clear win.
That team is pretty stacked. The last Spartan has taken place in a lot of the EVNT Championship Cups. And I mean, he's an incredible drafter, which is something that's going to be very important for this Alliance tournament.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of really strong teams returning this year, and a lot of teams whose members have shuffled around a little bit. So some members moving to other teams, and some teams forming out of the dregs of others. Like, I don't know how we're supposed to pronounce them. I think it's Barcode, but that team is just full of L's. I believe that's a bunch of the thermodynamics guys, a lot of small gang roamers. I expect we'll see them do fairly well.
You'd think that.
I was gonna say last year they lost to Brave, I think. So.
Oh, Brave was pretty good last year.
Though, yeah.
Brave was good last year. I will say, yeah, Brave was good last year, but I think it was just kind of a Brave's traditionally the guys that get farmed by the small gang roamers, but the thermodynamics kind of got farmed by them. So to be fair, again, Brave team was really good last year. I don't know how well they're going to do this year though, because I think the rumor is that they have lost their Logi pilot, who was the guy that was kind of one of the key members, and then most of the Brave Collective AT guys were in Peroto Social Club, which has now joined Skill Yourself. So that's going to be kind of rough for them.
Yeah, I think Yukiko Kami was the logistics pilot. I think is he still in Brave? But a big part of their core has left to Skill Yourself.
Does that mean that Skill Yourself will have more than one comp this year?
Well, I mean, Brave only had one comp last year, so...
Yeah, but this means that if they combine, they now have 2 comps.
It's pretty...
I mean at least did ironically well. I mean, they're seeded, so...
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Hydra Reloaded, going through, I think it's 14 games. Sorry, it's 12 games that they had to win to get into the final. And out of that, I think it was 17 matches they played total. But Skill Yourself also, I believe they went into the losers bracket quite early as well, much like Hydra, right? I think they dropped into losers bracket, I think, a bit later than Hydra. I think it was on the second weekend. But then they fought the way all the way up until 5th place, which is really impressive too. So I think Skill Yourself definitely have a lot of potential, especially if they get, a few extra really strong, brave pilots from last year onto the team.
One of the most grim sections of the bracket is the section that has NC Dot, Pandemic Legion, and Templars all in one section, like quarter of the bracket.
It's fine.
That
Don't
is
even
going
worry.
to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I mean, I know that we have every time the brackets come out for every year, it's always like, oh, we got the worst bracket. Oh, we got the worst bracket. I think that the NC Dot bracket is probably one of the worst brackets to act in regards to like actual challenge, because like at the end of the day, and I mean, I'm sorry to say this and hurt any Laserhawk people's feelings. However, Laserhawks did not actually have to go up against any of the top 8 teams from the previous Alliance tournament, which definitely helped them.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the only reason why they
also
didn't.
don't have a rough quarter of the bracket really either compared to the other ones. Like
Again,
if you look
yeah.
at Laserhawks' quarter of the bracket, who from there is like a scary AT team? Like a properly scary. If you are not one of the best teams in the tournament, you just will not win.
The strongest team there, I think, is probably Fraternity, but I mean, Penizal were 5th last time, but again, I think they kind of had a bit of an easier ride. I don't want to denounce them though.
I don't think you can count out a band apart because they're a team that has been playing together for quite a while. They lost, I think, 1 or 2 of their members to NC Dot this year, but they're still a solid team. And
aggressively mid-tier, you might say.
Yeah, they're exactly aggressively mid-tier. They're good enough that if you're not giving it your A game, they will definitely get one over on you. I experienced that last year when we lost to them with the Volta team. That was a dreadful moment. And then I also experienced it when I predicted that Hard Knocks would win against a band apart, and then a band apart absolutely turbo dunked Hard Knocks. So, I mean, this year, based on everything last year, I'm going to have to give them a lot more credit. So I think that they're going to do quite well in that bracket.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair to Laserhawks last year, they had an easy bracket, but the only reason why it was easy for them is because Hydra and Volta got upset. Otherwise, they would have had a much tougher time.
Yeah, if I learned anything from last year, is that predictions are entirely meaningless. Because everyone got killed early last year. Like everyone it was what? Like it was the top 6 or something from the tournament before had lost a game by before the round of 8 happened, or something stupid like that.
Yeah, I think the only teams that didn't get upset per se were NC Dot, Exodus, and Tuskers. Like almost every other team that we had predicted did get upset.
Tuskers have a really, really good run to the finals, actually. We should mention that. They've got to go through Hydra Reloaded, but that's it in terms of like super strong teams. There's Exodus, which has been torn apart through like people picking up their pilots. CVA, which is a pretty strong team, oddly enough, but they're no Tuskers. So I think Tuskers are easily going into the semifinals. The match that I'm most excited about, though, for the first day is Test Alliance Please Ignore versus Triumvirate. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic.
Well, one of the things since last year is that CVA have lost a bunch of dudes. I don't know how many tourney dudes, but random example, Jintan, I know he was involved in the tourney team, and obviously he's interested in the tourney as one of the commentators. So how many people, when Provi entirely through internals and no one really attacking them fell apart, what is the state of their AT team?
I think the AT team is relatively intact, actually. But they still have their core from EVNT, the league. They got through the minor league. I think they finished top. It was at 2nd place to get promoted into the major league. I think they were then renegated from the major league, but it's still that same core. And if you look up their pilots on ZQ board, like EOS Cannon, who was like the captain for the EVNT team, they're all actually flying together in small gangs still. And they're playing Exodus in the first match, interestingly enough. And Exodus have lost a key pilot in Wassa QC over to the Tuskers. And they've also lost a few other core members to the Tuskers. So I actually think Exodus versus CVA could actually be a potential upset. And
that might be really telling for both teams then.
Yeah, and it might also be one of those things that might actually hurt the Tuskers a bit, because I believe the Tuskers and Exodus are training partners. And so not only will they have to play each other on the round 3, but if Exodus does get upset by CVA, that's a lot of that might be a bit of a problem if their training partner is put under like a lot more stress or gets eliminated a bit earlier.
So Tuskers have been exclusive training partners this year with Volta, who are up in the
okay.
first bracket in the Vidra bracket there. I mean, when the tournament brackets came out and I saw it as well, I thought that looks pretty reasonable. It's not the worst bracket, it's not the easiest bracket, but it's still a pretty solid bracket. Although Vidra, that's going to be a pretty easy run, I think, all the way to round 4 for them. I don't see anybody in their corner that could really challenge them. I mean, maybe Black Legion can meme their way through for a while, but I don't think they're going to stand up against a team.
You can
like
only
Vidra.
bring one Mune in though.
Just the single ship lands on field.
I'm reasonably sure Black Legion lose to the Bastard Cartel day 1.
There's a good potential to happen.
Yeah, it's not throwing shade or anything. Just Black Legion historically has not been a good Alliance tournament team.
Well, mentioning the Bastard Cartel, they actually did beat Ghost Legion in the last tournament 15, which was one of the biggest upsets in AT15. So if they can beat Ghost Legion, then they might be able to beat the other Black Legion as well.
Yeah, just knock down all those legions. Maybe if they do it all the way, they can knock Pandemic Legion out as well. If they make it to.
So interesting fact: Pandemic Legion's finish in the Alliance tournament last year was the worst finish in their tournament history.
Yep, I think the worst they've ever come is 4th place in the last 10 years.
Not quite. So the only time that PL were not in the top 4 since AT. What was the first PL AT? It's like 6 or something.
84, I think.
84. Yeah. Yeah, 84. The only time that PL had not achieved top 4 before that was AT10, and they got top 8.
Wow.
Oh, AT10.
What happened?
Okay, fun story about AT10. We actually got 3rd place, and we didn't realize this because we got bronze medals the year after when we won. We were looking for what medals we got. 89 is when we completely shit the bed, though.
Oh, it was 89.
Yeah, it's the one where they lost the Hydra in the group finals and they got put straight into Dark Side and lost.
Okay, so everyone, all you commentators, take a quick look through the brackets because I'm going to come around and I'm going to ask you for one single match to watch out for in that first day. You have to pick just one. So you've got about 30 seconds to think of it while I start to wrap things up. So thank you very much for coming along and watching this show. We hope you've enjoyed it. I have been Ithaca Hawk, joined by a whole host of just amazing tournament people with pedigree and experience and smug faces. If you could see at least his face, I'm sure it would be smug. Tune in on Saturday, whenever we start. I think it's 3 p.m. UK time, which I think is 2 p.m. Eve time for the very start of the Alliance Tournament 16. Explosions are guaranteed. I am told by Nash Cadaver, 100% guaranteed explosions. So for that very first week, I am going to say that I am actually looking forward to, and it has to be the Test Alliance try match. I think that's going to be my match to watch out for, because even if it's not the most exciting match, I think all the drama surrounding it is going to be fantastic. Okay, so Tonia, what's your match to look out for?
I already mentioned it before, but I think Exodus versus CVA is going to be my pick because it's two sort of up and Exodus are kind of a team that were really good and maybe they've gone down a bit, and CVA are sort of a team that's maybe up and coming. So I think that's going to be one of the potential upsets of weekend one. I think it's the most likely upset to happen. I really love upsets, so that's the match I recommend.
Devastus, how about you?
I'm going to take a totally different route and say I'm going to keep an eye on our factional warfare enemy Valor Chords and just see if they end up in a direction that might put us up against them. That'd be fun.
Bart?
I'm going to agree with you and say, yeah, definitely try versus Tappy. It's going to be like just the Reddit posting, no matter who wins that, like everybody else wins. So the drama, it's perfect. It's going to get some hype up at least.
And Bay, are you allowed to make any predictions?
I think the match I'm most looking forward to is definitely the Barcode Alliance, purely because I'm interested to see how the analysts and commentators are going to interpret the name.
So one of the things about the Barcode thing is that they probably got it from here because that group are into the StarCraft scene, is that in StarCraft 2 on ladder, you make your name barcodes, so you don't know what pro player or what GM you're playing, so that by seeing their game, when you play them in a tournament, you don't know that they use that strat or they've been practicing that strategy. So in my mind, it's them going, we are the top tier grandmaster pro professionals of this scene. And then they're doing a reference to that. So I think hubris is a thing.
It's
Nice.
also
Is that
pronounced.
going to be your prediction as well, Potney, for the most exciting match or match to watch out for?
No, I'm gonna go with Sound Mind versus Phage and Terror. So of Sound Mind, they made it through the feeders last year, if I remember correctly, and then they beat Razor and lost to, I think, Thermo, which is the barcodes, and
It
then
was the Shadow Cartel as
the Shadow
well.
Cartel as well. Yeah. So they've not done good, but they've not done that bad either. And then Phage and Terror are brand new, and I might be entirely wrong, but it sounds like the name of a corp I have a few friends with in, so I'll be rooting for them.
Okay, and Elise, what's your pick of the day?
Definitely. I mean, there's some good matches. By the way, I'm pretty sure the barcode guys just did it to piss off the commentators. I don't think they're I don't think they have delusions of being elite StarCraft players, but the match that I want to look out for and that I'll definitely be watching is Pandemic Legion versus Two Maidens, One Chalice. Got to rep the boys. Got to watch them do good and make them. Got to watch them fly, not out of the boundary. See what they do. All eyes on us. Pretty excited.
I mean, is it really an alliance tournament until Pandemic Legion have boundaried? It's like cutting the tape to open something. The ceremonial boundary violation of the Pandemic Legion team. Anyway, thank you very much for coming along. Thank you to all the staff that make this possible. So that is all the EVNT people, the Streamfleet people, especially people like EQ, who has been working hard in the background today, making all the pretty graphics and little pop-ups and the videos and everything. It's just, it is so much work, and without them, this would be pretty much rubbish. So we owe them a lot. We have another AT talk show on the 1st of August, 2200 Eve time, also here on the CCP channel. That's next Wednesday, I believe. So that'll be between week 1 and week 2, where we'll be looking back, looking forward, and just generally looking at all things AT. I've been Ithaca Hawk. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time in Nottingham.